Hello to you, my friends, brothers and sisters. I welcome this beautiful present moment. I honor you. I see you. I am so grateful for this time and space to simply exist. And I want to take a deep breath on that. Thank you. It was profound. My name is Jordana, and today, hands down, all fakeness aside, I want to get real and talk about the things that most people don't want to talk about. Today, I want to touch on a sensitive subject, and it's going to be about sexuality. I know there are a lot of barriers surrounding this subject. I respect and I understand that there are different beliefs, different point of views. But here and now, I only speak to you from my own experience and from my heart. I share my truth in hopes that my experience can inspire others who may have felt or gone through something similar. I want you to know that you are not alone, that you have the right to speak loud and clear about the things in your life that have haunted you, that have changed you, that have marked you, shaped you, or even sometimes shamed you. Know that you have the power to see, to understand, to accept, to heal, and let go. We have that power, and that is amazing. While this experience may also assist a husband, or not necessarily a husband, but a partner, who may be experiencing a similar situation with his partner and doesn't know how to cope, or how to navigate it, or how to help. There may have been a time in your life when you felt a little lost in your own sexuality, and or what sexuality really is. What we have been taught it is, what beliefs have been placed upon us, and the confusion that we may have gone through throughout our lives. Today, I was talking to a good old friend out in California, and for some reason this came up in the conversation that we were having. So we were bringing up, fun and exciting and high school memories. And the subject of sexuality came up. So I said, I wish that I could ask the boys from my past what they really saw in me, what it was that attracted them to me. This friend is one of those few people that I can talk to about anything. We can go on with our lives for months, even a year or two. And then suddenly, randomly, we can just begin a whole conversation on any subject, just by following each other on social media, and we look at a story from each other and we can just start a conversation. It could be weird. It could be dumb. It could be, but it gets deep. So that's really nice. I'm pretty sure everyone at some point has had that connection with someone where you feel so comfortable that you can be yourself and express anything that's on your mind. If you haven't yet, I'm here for you. But anyway, this friend continued and asked, why would you want to ask what they saw in you? Is it just out of curiosity, or do you not think there's anything in you for them to have seen? I responded that it was curiosity due to all the confusion I went through for years in my life. I expressed that in my younger years, I felt that I needed to be wanted, that I thought that the only way men wanted me was in a sexual way. Did you ever feel that way? Or is that something that you are still trying to discover and figure out that feeling? If you are a bit older, do you remember feeling that way when you were younger? And I continued and I expressed that I always felt that I had a strong sexual energy, that I felt that I could attract anyone in that way just by simply making eye contact. But seriously, that is like literally how I felt. But I wasn't consciously aware of this feeling. And we continued our conversation, and I explained that the way I looked at men, and sometimes even women, because I had also a few lesbian friends back then who at some point also kind of felt attracted to me. And the way I connected with some people and like my natural flirtatious actions, where I kind of felt that they were part of what defined me during that time, part of my essence. Because it was innocent. It wasn't malicious. There was no bad intention. And to be honest, I didn't even know that I was flirting. It was just kind of like the way it was just kind of like the way I was, the way I acted, maybe to this point, but some people see it as flirtatious. So I guess we're just going to call it that. But I was told and taught through other people's beliefs back then that it was wrong, that it was a sin, that it was sinful, or that people would see it wrong, and you kind of get the idea. So I truly always felt kind of like a sinner child. I was always involved in some boy or man situation, caught in the drama of relationships. Now, I didn't actually have intimacy with anyone until I was 19 years old with my then husband for the very first time. But before that, it was more the smooching, the kissing, the intensity of the moment, where I'm trying to go with this. And so there was that strong curiosity, that feeling, that sex drive. I'm not going to shame myself for this anymore. And I will be honest, I have always had a very strong sex drive since I was a kid. And these are the things that we don't want to talk about. These are the things that we don't like to mention. These are the things that we don't like to have conversations about. Because who wants to admit that when we were children, we felt a strong sex drive? If it's normal, it's nature, it's part of existence. Many don't want to admit that. Instead, we get caught up in this belief that sexuality is a sin. And I do understand that these concepts were more common in past generations when things were a little more reserved, when parents couldn't even talk about sex with their children. Nowadays, things are a little more open, a little more out there. But some of us older folks can now talk about the feelings and thoughts we carried when we were younger that we couldn't describe. And I honestly have never heard anyone truly express the things they felt as a child regarding sexuality. I understand it can be scary and nerve-wracking. We don't want to be judged or looked at weird or strangely. We know, we know that some people may not understand. But today, for the first time in forever, just kidding. Gotta love my beautiful singing voice. I always do that every time I even hear myself or say a certain phrase that reminds me of a movie or a song. I just have to sing it or narrate the scene, in between the conversation. But anyhow, I had never talked about this before, admitted it to anyone or recognize to anyone that I had those feelings from childhood. You know, it is so valid and understandable that we had no idea that this is part of who we are, that it's okay to feel it, and that it is neither wrong nor a sin. And while we continued the conversation with my friend, and I said, so that was my body speaking. That was my body feeling, expressing its libido nature. Feeling was part of me, part of who I was. But the power of the mind can take you in completely different directions if we allow it. You know, life felt like I was always attracting those events and situations. Everything that had to do with boys' relationships, encounters, lies, drama, you know, and hiding things from adults. You kind of get the idea. You know, did you ever feel that your childhood or your youth years, you know, were kind of always surrounded by these events? Not like a normal childhood like other children have, you know, playing and games and play dates, and yeah, I never knew any of that. But anyway, so my friend said, oh, I see what you're saying, but from my point of view, I didn't only see your looks or your actions, because I remember actually laughing a lot with you. But I do understand what you mean. And my friend continues saying, so basically, you were a normal teenager having normal sexual curiosity and a desire to explore, but your beliefs stopped you or made you feel like you were a bad person for even feeling that way, let alone acting on it. And continue to ask, so do you think you would have actually had intimacy before 19 if your upbringing hadn't been that way? And I responded saying, yes, I probably would have done something earlier if I hadn't been carrying all that fear of going to hell for my actions. And I continued saying, I lived this situation for years. And then again, after I got divorced, after about 2.5 years of marriage. So when I was single again, you know, after this divorce, I already had my son. He was little. And I went and experienced the exact same things. Going to nightclubs, then working at nightclubs. It was still all about men. It was still hiding from my parents. I was still feeling shame because of my son, because I wasn't married, because I felt that I was following the wrong path, you name it. Today, my purpose in sharing this life experience is to spread awareness and acceptance of what we are as men and women, to understand the things we go through mentally and emotionally while we're growing up and we have no idea what's going on. You know, the things that sometimes we don't get any clarification on until we're older, or sometimes we never even do. And it's so amazing to be able to understand something at a deeper level, something that may have felt like a struggle throughout our lives, something that felt like an endless cycle of mixed emotions. You know, we deserve to stop feeling shame. We deserve to stop feeling guilty for emotions we did not even understand. No one deserves to feel any type of abuse or feel that they are being used in a sexual way or in any kind of way. You know, and as I have expressed many times in my life, this is what I came to realize. When I was younger, I felt that I needed to be loved, that I needed to be liked, that I needed to be accepted. And one of the ways I thought I was going to be liked, loved, and accepted was by being desired by others. In my high school years, some friends would always call me flirt, like I mentioned, the flirtatious that I didn't even know that they were flirtatious actions. But that was practically like my nickname. And so mentally, yes, I believe my mind took part in it. Some of us can be really sensitive. Some of us can easily be manipulated. And it's not because we're dumb or weak or any of that. We are simply very sensitive souls, and many of us come with extra innocence, I feel. It could be an old soul, new soul kind of thing. Whoever really knows. That may be another subject for another story. But there are some of us, maybe a lot of us, who feel as though this might be our first human life experience. Did you ever feel that way? Like this has been, like a whole new experience. I mean, probably people out there could be like, well, this is everybody's first experience. But no, if you believe in past lives, there's people that truly come ready in some sense, or they feel that they know all these things that they have learned before. I don't know. We're going to talk about this some other time. But it could feel so new, so unknown, with a sense of not belonging. Other people may feel like they've lived many other lives. They may come with much more knowledge or simply feel that they're ready for their purpose or kind of know what their purpose is from childhood. For some reason, I have always felt new to this world. And sexuality is such a big part of it all. That's how we are created, and it's how we create life, not only as humans, but everywhere else. Every living species, animals, beings on other planets, dimensions, and timelines, you name it. This is the way we procreate. So it should be engraved in us from the moment we begin to exist. It's a subject that is much more accepted now. So I was talking to another person who was also going through the same or similar situation, and she wasn't even sure how to express it. She wasn't sure whether the things she felt when she was younger or her thoughts and feelings were right, were wrong. She was still trying to figure things out. And I said, let's talk about this on a podcast. Let's share it and put it out there. Let's let others know that it's okay. That it's okay to talk about the things nobody wants to talk about. That it's okay to express ourselves. That it's okay to let go and heal something that has been with you for such a long time. Something you may have never been able to talk about to anyone because it felt shameful. And have you now realized that in your subconscious mind you wanted to feel desirable? The way you desire to be looked at, to subconsciously fulfill the needs of the ego. Because you're too young to even realize that the ego is. Years ago, when in the world where, did your parents ever talk about what the ego was and how an action or an emotion could be feeding it? All those emotions of trying to figure out who you are, why you're here, what life is, And on top of that, having all of this confusion about what it is that you're feeling sexually. Like, what is that I'm thinking? Is it right? Is it wrong? Am I a sinner? Life for a lot of us growing up was a real challenge mentally and emotionally. Others who can't possibly understand may say or think that this is not a reasonable argument or a reason to suffer, have an emotional reaction or become depressed. But each one of us, each individual can only take what they can take. Everyone has their own challenges in life. And for some, this could be part of it. And at that moment, it was something that needed to be addressed, something that needed attention, something that needed to be brought up and understood. But it didn't happen. It wasn't addressed. And that's okay. Because all of those, experiences brought us to a moment of clarity, understanding, acceptance, and healing. Now you can go back to that moment and finally understand what your younger self was going through and feeling and where it was coming from. Now that we find ourselves in these times of awakening consciousness, we can talk about energies, meditation, messages from the universe, angels, archangels, beings of light, our higher selves, and have an open conversation about what we truly are and why we're here, the power that we truly possess but did not know about. Now we can work on those events from our past. We can heal ourselves. We can go within and find the answers we need. We can now express what we understand. I now understand that the needs of my younger self needing to be wanted, loved, heard, and seen were being reflected in the way I sought validation from others in my need for external acceptance, and the way others saw my younger self back then was the way that she thought she needed to feel. Feel loved, feel needed, feel seen, feel heard. And she felt that she didn't have those things. With this being said, we are not blaming anyone here. We are not blaming our parents. Because truthfully, they did what they could with what they knew. Because they learned from other humans who did for them what they could with what they also knew, what they were taught, and so on and so forth, for generations, forever, for eternity. So yes, we are expressing from our own experience, now my own experience, my own perspective of life, the way I saw life, the way I felt in that moment. And in that moment of confusion, of innocence, coming into this life, not remembering anything, not remembering who I am beyond this body, knowing that we can come here to learn what a human life is about. In that moment, I felt that I wasn't receiving the understanding that I needed as a child, that nurturing. And so I went and tried to discover it myself, trying to find the purpose, trying to find the answers, trying to find what it was that I was feeling. Was I wanting what I was needing? And I found myself in situations that were not always the best. But those situations brought me to where I am today, to the understanding that I have of the complexity of the mind, of the things that we might have felt, thought, said, and done. So I say that yes, it's okay. It's okay to speak. It's okay to express. It's okay to recognize. It's okay to see. It's okay to bring it up and allow yourself to heal. So that feeling of wanting, of desiring, that libido energy that runs through your body, through your gut, your skin, your pores, your hair and your heart, and everything else, know that it is part of you. Some of us have felt that forever without knowing how to manage it. You know, perhaps many of you have heard this before, that many people who are psychics, mediums, or, you know, just highly intuitive people often carry a strong sexual energy from childhood. And because it is interconnected with our root chakra and our sacral chakra, which are the chakras of creation, of being, of existing, of knowing who we are, where we stand, how we survive, what we want, and where we are going. Our sacral chakra is a chakra of creativity. It's the chakra of passion, of desire, of the things in this world that we want, that we are here to do, that we love, and that make us happy. And it's part of the strong energy that we carry. You know, it's not necessarily because you want to have sex. It's not all about it. There is so much more to it on a much deeper level. So we can go on for years and years not knowing it, not understanding it. And so we involve ourselves in these relationship situations, which I did. And as I mentioned earlier, after my divorce, I went looking for those same scenarios all over again. Going to nightclubs, then working at nightclubs, you know, trying to attract men because that's the only way that my ego had convinced me that I could exist. Again, feeling wanted, loved, seen, and heard. The ego tells us that when everybody else is looking at us, we exist, that we are here, that we have a purpose. And some of us think we can find that purpose in another human being through being desired. Now let me tell you, I got married for the second time and went through years of a self-healing process. So my perspective on all of those situations from my past had changed, but not yet for the better. This experience could also resonate with many men who may be going through a similar situation with their partner. If your partner is experiencing confusion about their sexuality and you are having a difficult time understanding them or hearing them, coping with it, perhaps this can provide some clarity. For me, the first thing that I believe should always be present in a relationship is communication and respect. If there is communication and respect in a relationship, you can work through anything. And this is not always an easy subject to discuss. It wasn't for me for many, many years. I couldn't even say the word sex. And I know it isn't easy for many people. So when I got married again, to my current husband, of course, I didn't get married like 5 times. Not yet. Just kidding. With my current husband is who I'm talking about. I know I said I got married like, I don't know how many times throughout this conversation. But with my current husband, which has only been my second time, I went through similar thoughts and feelings, but from a different point of view. For starters, I was a very jealous type, which is common when we go through things like this. Often we have very low self-esteem, and because of that, we become overly aware of our surroundings, always on edge. Who's looking at my partner, or who is my partner looking at or talking to. So if you have a jealous lady or gentleman out there, dig a little deeper. Maybe this is where it's coming from. But no, seriously, it can be a very delicate subject for a lot of us, and depending on the timing. And until you make the choice to talk about it, it doesn't begin to get easier or make sense. Again, I found myself wrapped up in my mind, in my head during the first few years of my current marriage. I felt very confused again. I was already going through my own spiritual healing, and I thought I was so much more aware of myself. I'm sure if you've heard or experienced that a spiritual awakening is not all pink roses. You do go through very dark moments when you can finally see the things that you couldn't see before or did not want to see. You become so aware of things that you thought were forgotten or that you thought were never there at all. Once you can see, you can no longer pretend to be blind. Eventually things begin to rise to the surface. Answers to your questions, answers to your traumas. You look them in the eye, accept them, and let them go. So during that time of confusion in my life, while going through the spiritual work that I was doing, all of those feelings that I had when I was younger began to rise back into my life. This time was somewhat different. I was finally married. I finally had a family. But memories engraved within me began to surface. The feelings of wanting to feel wanted and desired. My thoughts made a sudden turn, and I began to victimize myself sexually. So instead of being that flirtatious younger girl seeking attention, I began to victimize myself over those moments. And I started to feel that I had always been desired against my will. My mind decided that all of those years, all those times, all those boys and men who came into my life had desired me in a way that I didn't ask for and didn't want. And so I became the victim. Again, I struggled with this for quite a while. My mind had convinced me that I was being abused in different ways. Or used, not necessarily or literally being sexually abused, no. I thought that I had been abused in different levels. The way they looked at me. So the looks, the words that were exchanged between two people, the actions, the moves that were made, the thoughts of desire, the way men would approach me, message me, or ask me if I was single or available. You kind of get the idea. I became the victim subconsciously because I was desperate to heal that part of my life that I still did not understand. Somehow I needed to run it around, to turn it around and become the victim, and find someone to blame, the guilty party. To be able to say that now I knew what had happened to me in my younger years. When we are not ready to see the things that we need to see, the opposite side of our light, our yin, we tend to turn ourselves into victims of a situation. And that is okay too. We have probably all done it at some point in our lives. It's part of the process. It doesn't make us evil. It's part of being here. It's part of learning how to be human. It's part of learning this life. And while continuing with my story, there were times during intimacy with my partner when I felt that I was being abused or used. Not because I actually was, but because I was allowing all of those memories in my mind to take over and create a false reality. A reality in which I believed I was being abused by my partner, when my partner had absolutely no idea what I was feeling or thinking. I realized that I wasn't saying anything, even though I was feeling that way. I was allowing the moment to continue. I had created a victim within myself. And so in my mind, my partner was abusing me because I wanted him to stop, but I couldn't say it just because I was thinking it. And I did not, just like me wanting him to kind of realize what I was thinking, which is impossible, because I was thinking it, that I was being abused or that I wanted him to stop. And instead of saying it just by thinking it, obviously there is no way he would know that I wanted him to stop. Because how could I? How could I say no? How could I say stop? That person is my spouse. What is he going to think? If you say stop, he's going to be upset. Or you might hurt his feelings. All these thoughts running through your head. You might make him think that you don't want him, like him, or desire him in that way. He might think that you're upset with him, that something happened, but you can't explain what. Why can't you say no? Why can't you say stop? Is it for them or is it for you? Are you truly a victim? Or are you creating that victim? Are you victimizing yourself because you feel shame? Because you feel guilty? Because you cannot see your own worth and value? Because you feel bad about things you once did, thought, said, or acted upon? Things that you believed were wrong, sinful, or shameful. And yet you still carried them through all of your confusion. These are all the thousands of thoughts that go through one's head, consciously or subconsciously. Until one day I came to a realization. I have so many of those moments. I love those moments of realization that arrive at exactly the right time. And so I understand I wasn't being abused. Well, I understood that I wasn't being abused, that I wasn't being used. I was truly and honestly creating that reality in my own mind because my ego did not want to see and did not want to accept all the things from my past that I needed to see. Things that were neither bad nor good. They simply were. But at that time, the mind, the ego, believed it was bad to remember. Because it was sinful, quote unquote. And who wants to remember that? Who wants to take responsibility for their own actions in situations like that? I came to realize many things. First of all, I had to work on finding my essence, finding what makes me, me. finding the things that I love, the things that I desire, some of my passions in life, and then understanding that I am neither the victim of life nor the guilty one. I realized that I had a choice to either victimize myself or to see it for what it was, accept it, understand that it was not a bad thing, that it was simply a natural process of self-discovery, that it was okay that I did not receive the guidance that I needed to understand that sexuality is part of us, part of existence. Here and now, I believe that the first step towards healing any situation, including confusion around sexuality, begins with ourselves. By finding who we are, by discovering our own value, our true worth, how much we value ourselves as a person, as a being, as a soul. Once we begin to understand ourselves and go deep into the things that we love, that we enjoy, that bring us happiness, we open the door to understanding that we do not need to victimize a situation in order to understand it, accept it, and release the shame surrounding our past actions, decisions, thoughts, or desires. Our libido is such a beautiful energy if we learn how to work with it. You know, our sex drive, which is the same thing. If we take the time to understand that part of who we are, it's the energy of creation. It's the energy of passion. It's the energy of desire. It's the energy of existence. And not only in an intimate way, it extends throughout our entire lives into the things that we love, everything that we do, every choice that we make. Our bodies speak volume if we only listen. Our energy lets us know what feels right and what doesn't. What path to take, what decision to make. Now, this might sound a little crazy, but haven't we all heard people say things like, when I clean my ears with a Q-tip, it feels like an orgasm? Or when they use one of those head scratchers and say it feels the same way. Or when a woman takes off their bra and says it feels better than an orgasm. I don't know, guys. I'm just saying this for a friend, and you be the judge of that. But seriously, we hear these expressions all the time in a joking way. Yet we are expressing the presence of that beautiful energy all the time. So it is beyond natural. It reminds us that our bodies are alive, that our cells are alive. If you still don't quite understand it, or if you are currently on that journey of healing, whether it involves abuse, thoughts, sexual experiences, sexual addiction, or anything else, I don't know. Whatever it is that you or someone else you know may be going through, men and women, no judgment. Seriously, no judgment. I invite you to go deeply within, ask yourself questions, talk to yourself, or find someone you trust. Go out into nature, the mountains, a river, a lake, a beach, your garden, your backyard. Any space where you feel safe enough to speak it out loud to yourself or to someone willing to listen and walk that journey with you. If you would rather do it alone, truly sit down and have a conversation with yourself about your feelings, your thoughts, and beliefs. Somehow, I promise you the answers and the peace you have been seeking will come. See your body for what it truly is. Then love it. Nurture it. Get ready. Get sexy. Put on some nice heels, or don't even wear heels. Put on a sexy dress with tennis shoes. I've done that before. I felt super sexy. Men, I'm talking to you too. Put on something that makes you feel attractive. Or by all means, if you want to wear a dress and feel sexy, go for it. Yeah. And as long as you begin to accept yourself and your body and the beautiful person standing in front of that reflection, you will feel beautiful, sexy, amazing, no matter what you're wearing. Even if it's a pair of sweats and a t-shirt. Because what is underneath is what you love, what you see, what you cherish, what you value. Every single thing that you have gone through in your journey has been perfect. It has all brought you to this moment of understanding, a moment to love yourself, to heal what needs healing, and to let go of what no longer serves you. It should not be shameful to want to be desired. There is so much more to life than being ashamed of something that may only even exist as a perception, something that perhaps isn't even there, or that nobody else would ever even notice. It may simply exist within our own minds. And that's where that saying comes from. Everything is in your head. For me, for me at least, that actually turned out to be true. I speak only from my own experience, but many of the things that I am now conscious of and that I struggle with in the past were perceptions of reality. And I understand. I truly hated it when someone told me that it was all in my head, because that wasn't for them to decide. It wasn't for them to judge. And it wasn't for them to determine when I was ready to understand. Which is why I respect everyone's timing, everyone's journey. And I am not implying that I am at a higher level or understanding, because we are all learning. We are all seeing the world in our own way, in our own time. Every moment is right. And when the time for healing arrives, it will reveal itself. So, brothers and sisters, no more shame. We need to see it. We need to accept it. We need to feel it. We need to live it. We need to embrace it. We need to be it. I embrace this moment. I embrace this precious space. I embrace this perfect time. I honor you. I love you. I see you. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful and blessed present moment.